going on, Secondhand Talent family? It's your boy Steiner here, as always, with my co-host Ducky. Ducky, what do you want to say to the people?
What's going on, everybody?
Thank you, Ducky. With us, we have John Heintz, producer and bassist from the Big Ol Nasy Getdown. John, thank you so much for being a part of the program.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
We're really happy that you're here. So there's a traditional first question that we like to ask all of our guests. Had you never heard the term before, what does secondhand talent mean to you?
All right. So I thought about that, and it's all a matter of how you're taking the secondhand aspect of it. If we're talking about it in time fashion, I look at it as secondhand talent. It's constantly in motion. It's the one thing that's constantly moving.
Yeah.
Interesting. I like that.
Yeah, we haven't done that one before, actually.
You know, at the time of this taping, I was just backstage at the end of the show for the Mike Gordon band, watching the crew breakdown, and makes me think of that. You know what I mean? Just like that the way they did it, it's just like the clockworkness of it.
He said they broke down the entire set on
less
stage.
than an hour and a half.
Yeah, dude, that's insane.
Less than an hour and a half. Like, shout out to the Talia Hall crew and shout out to the Mike Gordon crew.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. That's drums, percussionist, keyboard, bass, guitar. I think that's it.
It's the quickest mass breakdown I've ever seen.
That's efficiency right there.
Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself. I mean, I'm sure our we obviously know who you are. We're going to get to that in just a minute, but like tell our listeners, our viewers, who is John Heintz?
Who is John Heintz? Let's see. I was born and raised in Indiana.
Hey.
Nice.
Yeah. both of my folks are educators. And music was not really a big thing in the household. It was something that I really had to discover on my own. And
how did you?
It was through skateboarding.
Yeah, dude, same.
Yeah. Like through skating, I was hearing like Black Flag and the early Chili Pepper stuff, and some just really rad sounds that certainly wasn't coming out of my household.
Yeah.
So that was sort of my first introduction to it. And I also had gravitated towards guitar pretty young. When I think I was like 6 or 7, and I asked for a guitar and started playing a little bit. And
that's pretty young. Was there like a formative moment that kind of pushed you in that direction? I feel like that's kind of
it was
that
it was
really kind of, there might have been a bump.
Yeah, totally. So it was just watching kids in church play and thinking,
fascinating.
Yeah, and I was like, that looks kind of cool. I think
watching kids in school inspired me to want to use my voice. It's one of the things that was part of the impetus for using my voice to be a voice actress. That's really
very cool
here, because I can relate to that really well.
Yeah, it was strange. I don't know what it was necessarily that drew me to it, but there was something internally that made it feel like I need to be part of that.
That's really interesting to hear too, because like there's a common theme with the music and the church there that is like spirituality, and so to like have kind of a religious experience with the music during a religious experience like that, that feels kind of funny,
like you just had like a different religious experience and all
times two,
an alternative religious experience, right? It's all like alt rock, alt religion.
Yeah, totally. But the interesting thing about being raised on that was I had no knowledge of like regular music until the skateboarding era, and I was just like,
that must have been shocking going from church to Black Flag.
It totally was.
What was your segue like? Where was the point like where you like heard a band and you were like, holy shit? Yeah.
There was a kid that I went to elementary school with, Jeff Johnson. He had this older brother that would pass him down like knowledge. The fucking wisdom was coming down from like these kids that had escaped like Catholic school and now were exposed to the rest of the world, right? And so I remember on one trip, it was a school trip. Jeff pulled out his Walkman, and it had Led Zeppelin on it.
Nice.
And we all just sat and listened to that. It was like, whoa, that's something right there.
Yeah.
And my uncle, he's a musician, but he hates electrified music. He's like a total traditional bluegrass, like old school honky tonk player. And I think there's a few exceptions to the rule, because he would send mixtapes to my dad. And every once in a while there'd be something like the Eagles.
Yeah.
For our audience
that
that doesn't know, a mixtape is when you would record music onto either what's called a cassette tape or a CD, which stands for compact disc.
That's good.
And you would give it to people in hopes that they would like you better. That was
You
is You look it up on Wikipedia.
Well, that's what's interesting to me, real quick, is you mentioned, you know, how he loved traditional bluegrass, but also the Eagles, and like I can see that, right? Because the Eagles,
there's a little crossover there.
They did some fantastic like vocal harmonization, and that is a major key to
taking
bluegrass.
it easy.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's
And
like
that was
4 or 5-part harmonies, even that.
Sure.
It's awesome. So that makes a whole lot of sense. But you continue that.
No, but you're right. That is one of the things about a band like the Eagles, or I mean, even as crazy as it sounds, a band like Def Leppard, where you have every member in the group that can sing, and they can do these harmony stacks that just fill up so much space. Boston, that's another band.
Well, you know, one of the things that I love the most about Big Ol Nasty Getdown, and we've got the Dream EP. Or sorry, the Mellow EP. Dream is the B-side, right? Yeah, Dream is the B-side. The Mellow EP right here with Kendra Foster, Big Ol Nasty Getdown. Check it out. Grab a copy. It sounds freaking awesome. There's instrumentals on it. There's remixes. Really, really, really love the way it sounds.
So that's a good question. How do you come to deciding, like, how you, as the producer? I assume like you had a lot to do with like, orchestrating, like having the all the remixes and all that kind of stuff. Like,
that's the question. What does it mean to produce Big Ol Nasty Getdown?
Yeah.
Like, what is this like? It's a band with so many people.
It's producing. It's an interesting process, because part of producing it is not producing it, if that makes any sense. It
doesn't. Let us, I mean, to us it does maybe, but let our listeners know.
In the sense of letting it happen without sticking too much of my own sense into it. Like letting the natural progression happen. Like you can produce music where you're just overly producing it, where it's just, it seems like the song's never done, and you're always adding more, and you're changing this and you're perfecting that. And that's cool. That's definitely a way to do it. But there's also a really laid back approach where you set the vibe, where you pick the group of players that you think are going to really jive well, and you let the experience happen. And then out of that, the hopes is that you're going to have a level of communication amongst the players in that session where you walk away with some songs or some incredible jams. Really, the process when I'm doing it is there's nothing pre-written when we're going in. It's all letting it happen on the spot.
It's all off the dome. It's the vibe.
Yeah, exactly. And what we're trying to do in that moment is just have a safe place for people to really explore their creativity as far as it can go. But also the players know that we need to get some actual songs out of the session, because I need those for the album to be able to monetize, to be able to keep doing it.
I have a real quick question, and then I know Ducky has one. But so for a song like Wake Me Up, which is a song that I really truly love, you know, you talk about the spontaneity of the jam sessions, which is something that I absolutely love about Big Ol Nasty Getdown. It's one of the things that attracts me the most about it. But do those lyrics come up spontaneously in those sessions that you're talking about?
Well, I was gonna tell you the story of Wake Me Up. since you had mentioned that you really like it.
Please, thank you.
So
Yes.
the way we originally would do the sessions would be we'd fly in a number of players in from different bands, and we'd be in a central location. The first album was in New Orleans,
Yeah,
right.
which is where Wake Me Up happened, and we finished it
I
up
was
at
gonna
George
address that album
Clinton's
too.
studio. And then volume 2 was in a big cabin in North Carolina. And so volume 1, we stayed in a mansion on Royal Street down in the French Quarter.
Yeah.
And
Nice.
there's probably 25-30 of us staying in this house, and we were
Wow.
having these just raging house parties with an entire backline of gear in the living room. And a lot of those instrumental beds were getting written throughout those house parties, and when we were taking them into the studio and tracking them the next day. And it was a blast. And
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of fun.
I was gonna say, like, where were we?
Right.
We had a lot of fun because I saw the lineup on that first album, man,
and the second, and we'll get to maybe the third later. I mean, you know.
Yeah, the third's on the horizon. It's just about finished. But
nice.
during that week down in New Orleans, different players could only make it for different parts of the week.
Sessions.
So
you had to optimize some time there then.
Yeah. So Ralph Roddenberry was driving down from Atlanta. He had a gig, I think, that Tuesday night, and he was just going to drive straight through the night to get to the house on Wednesday. So he makes it there in the wee hours of the morning and just passes out. I mean, of course he's going to pass out. He's driving through the night. Like, dude was tired, right? So he winds up oversleeping a little bit, and we're all at the studio. And he comes racing into the studio singing, "Wake me up, don't let me sleep too long, because I don't want to miss what's going on."
Wow.
And
That's
it was get out of town.
Yeah. And we were
wild.
We always happened that way.
That's wild.
And we had been working on this instrumental bed, because like the way we do it is we'll do the instrumental beds first, and then we send them out to the vocalists to write their lyrics, and then write the and then sing on it. But when we have everybody in the house together, we'll have some of the lyricists and vocalists there, and stuff will happen in the moment. But these days, a lot of it I send out after the fact, because I'll focus on the production of the instrumental. But
kind of
now,
lyrics
after, and to back up a little bit with my production style, and when I say not producing is part of the style with the Get Down, there's different approaches that I take depending on the environment. Like there's stuff these days I'm doing that's a little more heavily produced, that's taking an isolated drum track and building it up player by player, and passing it just remotely.
I was really going to ask, because you mentioned that you had switched to, I have a couple questions which I'm sure we'll flow to, but going out of what you had mentioned about how you had kind of recently switched into like passing tracks along remotely, was that a decision intentionally from like a production standpoint, or was that something that happened like to keep producing music through a lockdown, when like that was kind of really the only option?
It was a lot to do with just trying to stay busy during lockdown and give people some opportunities to keep working and to keep creating. For me, it was one of the most productive times I've ever had. I probably put 100 songs into production during that time, with players that otherwise I wouldn't have been able to get at, because they've got tour schedules and so on and so forth. So everybody was home, everybody's anxious to work. So it really caused the band to expand and grow significantly, because now all of a sudden something that would take me 6 months to get done might be able to get done in 3 or 4 days because the person not on tour.
They're available like right there for
Absolutely.
unsolicited amount of time, basically.
So obviously, as the producer, you have, you know, a big hand in, you know, in merch development, and you've worked with a ton of cool artists, you know, Mellow EP right there, Mellow Pin on the hat.
Down to the
Obviously,
volume one.
we mentioned Mark Spusta earlier. One of my favorite artists. Shout out Mark again.
Who did the volume one art? We'll get to that. I'll let him
but
go.
like, how do you choose the artists? How do you approach them? Do they come to you? Like, what's this process been like, you know, as the person kind of at the helm of how this music gets released?
Well, when I started looking at the whole packaging options for the vinyl and for the CDs and whatnot back in the day, I decided that I felt if we use the best of the best artists, it would really create the full package. Because I felt like we were handpicking the best of the players out there.
Yeah.
Let's also, you know, incorporate the best of the visual artists. So I really had liked Erykah Badu's covers, and I looked
really
up,
see that vibe in the Mellow EP for sure.
yeah, different. So the person who did that Mellow and Dream EP art is James Flames, and he's done a lot of work.
I didn't even know that. Sweet. I love James.
Yeah, so that's he's been somebody we've been doing a lot of work with lately. He's done a few different covers for the songs because, you know, I want to have a piece of art attached for each one of the songs as well. So when we release our singles, I have an artist do an individual cover for those. When we're doing the vinyl, I usually have 3 to 5 pieces that I commission for the entire artwork suite of that. And I'm just going through and looking at who my favorite artists are at the time and who's putting out some really, really rad work. I just did a piece.
Slip cover is sweet.
I was gonna say I absolutely love the touch on this package with this gorgeous slip mat, the matching pin that I'm wearing.
Oh, thanks.
And reverse side with, you know, with the name of the band on there. I mean,
yeah,
y'all. I mean, the quality of the production package.
Which side do you face up, dude?
It almost it makes me want to frame it, and I wish I had too. The quality of the production package on this and
scale
and on the Spusta package, the fact that you guys put stickers in there, the specially designed card, like it's just really great to see how you guys put that, how you put that touch in there that really does connect to the fans because, you know, like I said, or maybe I didn't, you know,
Mark, it's like going the extra mile, man.
Mark's art is really how I found out about Big Ol Nasy Getdown, and I'm grateful for it, you know, because we get to have this conversation now about some incredible music and, you know, kind of leaping off of the legendary artists that you've worked with.
Well, thank you.
From an art perspective, the musical artists.
Yeah.
You know.
With the package we did with Mark, one of the fun things with that is there's ways to be able to approach the packaging where you can make it art from front to back. So instead of doing just a standard, you know, thin paper, what would have been 14x7 sheet that just gets folded over with the 2 different covers on it, it's like, well, why not go ahead and separate those into 2 individual hand-signed prints? You still need the covers, so why not make the most of it and have each cover be a piece of art? And so we did 32 different colors with that particular one, which was a lot of fun to be able to play with the different papers and have those options that otherwise would not have been available.
With art for sure.
Yeah. So that was a lot of fun. I'd love to do another with him soon.
You know, speaking of the studio process and kind of how you've morphed it, the way you talked about it, it sounded so free form, you know, the first time. How was it, you know, knowing you had to get songs out of it for an album, but going in with like absolutely nothing prepared? Because I know jam sessions are fun, but when you're doing it in a studio and you're like, okay, this is studio time, and now we have to get a product out of this. How did that go, that whole process?
Well, with volume 1, we had no blueprint. We didn't know what was going to happen. I honestly thought it was going to be more of a jam session type of
Yeah.
thing, and there would be a lot of soloing and a lot of players just kind of maybe overplaying, if you will.
Yeah.
And what happened is we walked away with actual songs.
Yeah.
And so we completely shifted our approach to it that moment, because we realized we had some stuff that might be of interest to a lot of people. So we have to, broader than just like a jam band type of fan base, that this would actually
absolutely
stretch across multiple different fan bases. So we had to approach it differently. And so so that process became a little more involved in post-production. So in the sessions, the production is minimal. It's the post-production is where it's really happening, with making decisions on, okay, well, this sounds awesome with bass, drums, and a couple of guitars and keys. Would a horn section add anything to this? Maybe. Would adding some percussion to this? Okay.
So that's where the writing came in.
Well, that's where, some of the writing. I mean, it's some of the decisions after the fact of getting the song to a complete form.
I mean, was there a flip moment, like where you guys were jamming, and then eventually you were like, let's kind of shift towards like finishing this idea and then creating more? Like, at what point did it kind of shift into like you guys had written some ideas to then follow up on in post-production?
Well, it's not really being followed up on post-production per se, because the material, mostly from the instrumental bed, so far as arrangement, chord changes, and all that, we're walking away with the final take that's going to be the bed for adding the vocals or adding anything. It's really a subjective decision after the fact as to whether or not you want to add more shit to the song or not. And these days I've been doing a lot more removing stuff from songs and making a lot more space. Like, the thing that was really raw about volume 1 is that's all we had. We had those 10 songs or 11 songs that happened in those sessions over that week. And then when we went to George Clinton's studio to finish up some of the tracking, we wrote a couple more then. But beyond that, that's really all we had. And so we had to make the most of what we walked away with. There wasn't any discussion about putting any more money into it for a second album or anything like that. We were already so far beyond budget on the first one that we were just hoping to make it to the finish line without.
So the second one was basically purely based on reception to the first one then?
It was in my need to, or I shouldn't say just I mean, there's a few of us over the years that have played an integral role in this. And when I first started the project, John Paul Miller from Your Mama's Big Fat Booty Band and Derek Johnson were very active with it, and Frank Mapstone, who's a brilliant keys player from Florida. He was the most hip to producing of all of us at that time, and he kind of took on a lot more of that studio role, because a lot of us were just road dogs. We had just done the touring and weren't as hip to the studio world as he was, that type of thing. But going in where it was like, I had only been in the industry for a handful of months at that point, so I didn't know shit. Yeah,
okay then. Now,
so how did you flip to getting all these big guys on volume 1?
What flipped this? What sparked it? Like, I mean, talk about
Earth, Wind, and Fire members.
First of all, what jumped you into the industry? Second of all, how did it turn around within a few months into the Big Ol Nasy Getdown?
Right. Well, it happened in Chicago.
Hey,
so news. Yeah. So little bit of a sad moment to the story. My grandmother died in 2006, and
less happy than we thought.
yeah. But I wound up going out early for a I don't know. I just went out early before the wake and everything, and just wanted to hang in Chicago for a couple days. And I had only known a couple people in the industry, and it wasn't in any capacity of me being in the industry. I just knew them from meeting them at a show or whatever. And one of those guys was Chris Chu from the North Mississippi All Stars.
Wow.
Shout out.
That's a
Hell
great
yeah.
first connection to make.
Yeah.
Right.
It
And
is.
so it just so happened that Chris and Humphreys, the Mississippi All Stars and Humphreys McGee were playing the night before her wake or something, maybe 2 nights.
There comes
before.
the jam band fan scene. That's I was wondering where that came into it.
Right. And so I just hit Chris up. I'm like, hey, I'm in town. My grandmother died, blah, 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 blah. He's like, well, come on out to the show. If you need anything, I'm here for you. And that was like the first moment of like, wow, this dude's a really good guy. And
Chris is awesome. I mean,
yeah,
doing the after parties and the New Year's shows from like 2008 to 2009. They're all like just really nice
Class guys.
yeah. Super, super cool guys. So anyway, do the show, hang out backstage, and it was kind of like one of my first backstage experiences. I'm like, wow, this feels like cool. I really missed my world. I missed my calling, because I was in the insurance world at that point. I used to own an insurance brokerage.
Oh man.
And I was thinking about
wait, you owned the brokerage.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And so I was just kind of questioning my life. I was like, what am I doing here? Like, this isn't my world. I'm not an insurance guy. I'm a music guy, but like,
yeah.
But here I am. I'm 30, and I'm just like, fuck, I missed it. So anyway, at my grandmother's wake, she had been living in a convent with my aunt for like the last 7 years of her life. And so the wake was at the convent. I went outside to have a cigarette, and I saw all these nuns running around with these big smiles on their faces. And I looked at my girlfriend at the time. I'm like, what are they so happy about? They got nothing. And before I could get the nothing out, I was like, oh my God, my life's bullshit. My life's total bullshit.
You're like, they got nothing. I got nothing.
Right.
Oh man.
They're walking around completely happy and at peace with themselves because they followed their heart and
they have everything.
They have everything. It's not about this material bullshit. It's not about this lifestyle.
Deep as shit.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right. And so I looked at her and I'm like, I'm going to walk away from everything. She's like, what do you mean? I said, I'm going to walk away from everything and try music. And I thought that was going to be buying and selling guitars on eBay. I had no idea what was going to come next. And so that was that moment of like, holy shit, I can have some control of my life and I can try something that I've always wanted to try. The only reason I'm feeling bad, like I got left out, was because I never put enough effort into trying.
Yeah.
That's quintessentially the message of Secondhand Talent, is that, you know, you never know where a little effort might get you. All it takes is being there and greeting people with a smile on your face. Incredible realization to take away from it.
Yeah.
And I mean,
thanks.
Here you are. I mean,
it was a game changer.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because I mentioned before, my father is a professor. And so when I mentioned to him that I was walking, like, you know, he's business minded. And
father or his professor?
My father, who is a professor. Gotcha. But he also writes accounting textbooks. So he's like very much analytical and logic based.
So writes accounting textbooks.
Writes accounting textbooks.
That's a new one. I'll take that down.
So when I went to tell him that I was walking away from this stable career in insurance to try music, it was epic. Like, the reaction was spectacular because it made no sense whatsoever to really anybody, but especially him, who's trying to just break this down from a logical standpoint. Like,
I can from here look in the past and see the gears turning.
Yeah, like
unbelievable.
this is a really fucking whack ass decision he's about to make. But like, but I went for it. I decided to follow my heart and what felt like was right for me, and hopefully
Great, man.
have the resilience to bounce back if it was a bad decision.
Yeah.
But then like all kinds of crazy things happened, and I wound up on tour, and it took on a life.
Who'd you end up on tour with?
A band called the Lee Boys out of South Florida. They're in the Sacred Steel world, kind of like Robert Randolph and Family Band.
Cool.
Oh, right
Nice.
on. Well, fuck yeah. Shout out.
And
So how did you transform that into like, you know, getting members of Earth, Wind and Fire and all these legendary funk and soul bands?
I
into the
mean,
studio
Lara
for
Lalonde,
Volume
like-
1. It wasn't even like you had to prove yourself with Volume 1 and get them to Volume 2. You got them on the first one. Like, how did that even come, like, formulate?
Well, one of the things and the idea for the project came when I first started touring with the Lee Boys, because there was a festival that I'd played at, and at the end of the night there was a super jam, and it was a bunch of people from different bands. And I had always heard that one of the big mysteries of recording is how to capture that live energy in a studio environment.
Sure.
And I thought to myself, well, geez, I wonder if you could stage a situation where you've got the excitement of the players feeding off one another who typically don't play together, and you bring some music aficionados into the session and just have them be flies on the wall and feed off that energy. Maybe you could create that same excitement. And
I think you got some analytical nature from your
That's
father.
totally right.
No, but that's a great thought process.
Yeah.
I mean, I love how
It's
you're
so obvious, but not at the same time.
I love how your brain went to like, let's replicate the essence of jam, the vibe of the jam,
without it just being like a live album.
It's a jam in a bottle.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely does pull a lot of its inspiration from that. The only difference is the way that the final product winds up being a little more structured than just the free-for-all jam, because like what you're hearing will often be like a second or third take on the album.
Okay.
So it's
interesting.
What the material is coming out of is the jam, but there's a mindfulness about keeping structure to that jam. So we might
guys like, oh, that was good, let's do that on the, and then it evolves right into the songs.
It's because you know, at any moment myself or somebody else is playing might be like, okay, we got a section there.
Right.
Where are we going to go from there? Right. And that's how it's going to get written. It's not happening just like that one time.
It's like Lego built on spontaneity.
With the stuff that's remote,
with the varnish.
It's a little more. It is Lego like. In a lot of ways, but because you can do a lot with the isolated drum track.
First one was like finger painting.
We're trying to relate to the Gen Xers in our audience.
Yeah. But the volume 1 and volume 2, there's definitely a lot of posts that goes into it to make it be what it's gonna.
Especially I was gonna, the marketing. When I was younger, obviously, and volume 1 came out, there was a lot of just like advertising I was seeing on like
there was hype, man.
Facebook and Instagram. It was a lot of the first time I was seeing like sponsored posts for stuff. So I
significant, you guys consistent hype.
Like even like 10 years ago when that came out, social media was not as big as it is now. So it was the decision to really push on social media. It's interesting.
It was pioneering at the time.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I figured out that was really the best place to advertise, because at the time, that's where everybody was looking. Yeah. Everybody was always on social media, so it made sense, and that was great. And we put a pretty decent budget behind it. But nowadays things have gotten crazy.
Weird.
We don't have paid promotion here, but we're absolutely going to promote Big Ol Nasy Getdown. Ducks, you have anything you want to say in parting?
What an absolute blast it was to talk to, I mean, this has been one of my favorite projects since
Absolutely.
like 8th grade. So
Absolutely.
Right on. Thanks.
Absolutely not a Big Ol Nasy letdown. We sincerely appreciate it. John Heintz, thank you so much for being a part of the program.
Yes.
For John, thank you so much. For Ducky, I'm Steiner.
For Steiner, I'm Duck.
And thank you so much. We are Secondhand Talent. We'll see you next Wednesday. Dude.
Yes, awesome. That was awesome.